As of the April 2025 update, the Dutch heavy cruiser line is now fully researchable in World of Warships Legends, and I'm sure many of you are out there grinding it right now. I'd say it's definitely a line worth grinding, although I've only played this ship, the Tier VII Haarlem, the Tier 8 Johan de Witt, and of course the legendary Tier Howden Loo, which unfortunately is no longer available and won't be until sometime next year. However, if you missed out on the Howden Loo, I'd say it's definitely worth grinding to the Johan de Witt because that ship is cracked. And so is this one, I think, the Harlem at Tier 7. We'll talk a little bit about the ship in this video, but mostly I want to go over what happens in the battle, because there is a cardinal principle of cruiser gameplay that we sort of break in this battle, not really knowing it at the time, and later on it's going to come back to bite us. We'll get to that in a minute, but first I'll give you the basic stats, or specs rather, on the Harlem. It's got 40,100 HP, which I'd say is a decent HP pool for a heavy Tier 7 cruiser. The armor is likewise good. The bow and stern are overmatchable 25mm plating, of course, that's to be expected, although we do enjoy a 40mm icebreaker on the bow, and the upper belt armor is likewise 40mm. Very tanky armor for a cruiser at this tier. Deck is 30, so that's going to get overmatched by the likes of Georgia, Musashi, Republique at Tier 8. Well, Georgia's at Tier 7, but you know what I mean. Still, very tanky ship when it comes to dealing with battleships, so long as you're properly angled. The guns are 9 203mm guns, bit more of a standard caliber than what you would find on the Johan de Witt at Tier 8. I believe that has 240mm guns. Like the Johan and the rest of the line that I've played, the guns are not the most accurate, but the fire chance on their HE is decent at 13%. Perhaps not the highest fire chance on a heavy cruiser you've ever seen. AP does a maximum of 4,800. And as for the aircraft and the airstrikes, which we were just using there to sort of torture the Azurlane Richelieu, we've got airstrikes of 10 aircraft, which each drop 6 bombs. That's a total of 60 bombs, quite a lot. And the bombs do a maximum damage of 5,800 with a 33% fire chance. So they can be useful. But here you see we're out in open water, and we're being farmed by a Cleveland, which has pretty good aim and a lot of range on his main battery guns. You can see he's reduced our hit points pool by almost 50% at this point, and we're about 3 minutes into the battle. This leads me into what I was alluding to a moment ago about one of the cardinal principles of cruiser gameplay being broken here. We've lost a lot of HP, and we've chewed through one of our 3 repair parties. We've got damage counting on the Azurlane Richelieu with this shot here and the fire it lit. But because we've lost so much HP, we're going to have to be a lot more careful later on in the match, and we're going to have a lot less leeway to maneuver. Back in the day, everybody's favorite CC, T-Bull, once said something along the lines of, hit points are sort of like a playmaking currency. And that is a good analogy. The more hit points you have, the more risk you can take, especially later on in the game, where you might have to take risks in order to secure a win. And cruisers, as a class, if battleships are sort of the tank class that also uses its guns to check people driving across the map and showing broadside in pursuit of some goal, and destroyers are the eyes and ears of the team, and the things that go out and secure objectives, cruisers are sort of like the damage dealers. That's generally speaking what their role is. And they become more useful later on in the game the more HP that they have. So it's generally speaking a good idea to preserve your HP in a cruiser for as long as you can. Now, of course, we've lost just a little bit over half of our HP. We've got a heal about to come off cooldown that we can use to restore ourselves to a little bit over half HP. But the HE spam from the Cleveland was a real problem. And frankly, I don't know that there was really a reason why we had to sit there in open water and take the HE spam. There's an island here off to the right of the screen that I think we could have sailed to. And our concealment with this build, we're using Dorman, by the way, instead of Firstner, although I wish, in retrospect, after this battle, that I had been using Firstner. It would have been nice to be able to go dark in a little under 10 seconds after shooting the main battery guns. That might have stopped us from taking as much damage as we did, but with the Dorman build and with specking into double concealment for the inspirations, we've got a sea detectability range of 8.9 kilometers, which probably means we comfortably outspot literally every ship in this game except for the enemy destroyers. And so I think we could have pulled up to this island and then used it as cover, maybe peeked around like we're about to do now, to shoot at the Nagato with our main battery guns and also drop him with the airstrikes as he pushes in. Cleveland is on our case once more, or maybe he's not. I thought he was going to be shooting at us from behind this island. Now he starts. He's on our case once again, and as you saw, his HE is a significant threat if we continue to get focused by it. Our HE and our bombs are a significant threat to this Nagato too, provided he wants to stay stationary. This second airstrike, I think we launch at him and he decides actually it's a better idea to move forward and get out of the way. Doesn't quite save him from all the bomb hits, but from the majority of them. In any case, though, he's pushing into not only me, but 3 additional blue ships, and so he's not going to be floating for too much longer. Our concealment is so good that we can come around this island, anticipating that the Nagato will no longer be a threat shortly after we do. There's another fire on the Nagato for a total of 7, started between the main battery guns and the airstrikes. But at this point, we've got 24,902 HP, and we've used 3 out of 3 of our repair parties. The game is not even quite half over yet, and the score is fairly close. The enemy team has 1 more ship still floating than we do, although we're hoping to change that by securing a kill on the Cleveland. There it is, a little bit of vengeance for the HE spamming that he did to us earlier on. And then the Benson is sort of caught with his pants down here, you could say. He's inside of his smoke screen and reversing into it to no longer be spotted, but I think at this point he should probably be turning tail and running away. He's got this battleship pushing straight into him, and to be fair, he is going to take out that battleship with his torpedoes, but, well, the battleship takes him out before he goes down, so it's a fairly even trade there. However, the enemy team is still ahead of us by 1 kill, well, 2 kills, we're outnumbered 2-1 now, and it's just me and the Pozarski over to my left that are still floating. We are facing off against a Florida, a Kansas, a Blazing Dread, which is on the other side of the map, and the final enemy destroyer whose name I cannot remember. So if we're going to win this match, then we're going to have to do a lot of work in order to accomplish that. Seems like everybody right now is focused exclusively on the Pozarski, which is good for me. It's going to allow me to deal some damage to this Florida. He's the lowest HP target at the moment, so I figure we ought to focus him down first and then see what we can do afterwards. Now, though, the Florida and the Kansas do notice me. We're doing excellent damage to the Florida with the airstrikes. I'm sure that feels unpleasant for him. There's another one as we look away to shoot at the Błyskawica. Florida is nearly on his way back to port. Pozarski finishes him off. We're up to 109,000 damage now, beginning to take shots from the Błyskawica and also the Blazing Dread behind us. But thankfully, the enemy destroyer smokes up, which cuts off his line of sight and renders us dark. We can post up behind this island now as Kansas pushes in. There's really no reason for Kansas to push into me, I don't think. That's just going to give us the advantage and him the disadvantage. But we've only got 13,000 HP right now, and that is going to severely limit our ability to maneuver here. We've also got to keep in mind the enemy cruiser behind us. I believe the Blazing Dread is some sort of IJN copy-paste thing. I think it might be a Miyoko, or maybe it's a Mogami. I can't quite remember. In any case, it's got 203 millimeter guns, And of course, 203 millimeter HE is going to pen more than 32 millimeters of armor, up to 38, I believe. So it'll pen our deck, it'll pen our superstructure, and the bow and stern. And well, the HE damage from IJN cruisers is generally really good, so it's going to eat away at our HP if he's allowed to focus us. Luckily, we found a position tucked in here between the islands where we're mostly dark most of the time, and we're able to harass this Kansas. He's still spotted because I think the Pozarski is in open water doing all the things that he's doing, which, to be fair, is fairly impressive for a Kutuzov that is not exactly the most heavily armored light cruiser in the world. Kansas has a one-track mind in focusing on the Pozarski. He's still pushing forward. We've acquired the high-caliber metal, and Kansas is broadside to us, so we're going to see if we can't switch to the AP and get a little bit more damage. I wish, in retrospect, I could have taken one shot against the Błyskawica. He got away. He was spotted briefly, and he's got almost no HP left. But it's his continued existence in this match that is ultimately going to spell doom for our team. At this point, it's still theoretically anybody's match, but we don't have a lot of HP left, only 5,000. One single hit from the Kansas, maybe a couple hits from the Blazing Dread behind us, and we're back to port. But speaking of back to port, Kansas looks like he's on his way back too. We continue to use the islands to intermittently go dark. Kansas can't keep a beat on us, so he continues to shoot at Pozarski, who ultimately finishes him off. That leaves this Blazing Dread, who is mostly full HP, and then the Błyskawica somewhere in front of us. We're going to switch to the armor piercing after this shot against Blazing Dread, which renders us spotted. Not great. This is why I wish I had Firstner. This guy's out of our detectability range, and I think if we had Firstner, by now we would be dark, so he wouldn't be able to do all this damage to us. Of course, he lights us on fire. We Citadel him because he's giving flat broadside, but the Blazing Dread is a unique IJN cruiser, and with this other shot here against his still flat broadside, no Citadels, bad roll on the RNG, I suppose. Again, these guns are not super accurate. And Blazing Dread smokes up. Błyskawica is now in a position where he can spot us, and, well, because we lost so much HP in the game early on, we go down. So, unfortunately, it's not always clear till the end of the game where losing all your HP to a Cleveland in the first few minutes is going to come back and bite you. But it did here. Pozarski simply can't finish off the rest of the team, spotted by the Błyskawica and farmed by the Blazing Dread in a smokescreen, so we are defeated. But we earn 2,440 base XP and do 170,000 damage with this Tier 7 cruiser. This thing is, even though we lost this game, this thing is pretty potent. I think it's well worth grinding to, and there's a lot of Tier 8 ships in this game too that you'd say are probably not worth grinding to. But the Johan de Witt, the successor to Haarlem, is definitely worth it. So, I would highly recommend grinding this line. It's really fun. It's perhaps a little bit too powerful and too cracked at the higher tiers here, but it's a good line to have. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.